If your content isn't generating leads, it's not because it doesn't work. It's because the strategy behind it probably needs a reset. Now, most speakers underestimate how long it takes for great content to gain traction and quit before their content has a chance to take hold. But on today's show, we're going to dig into how to build lead magnets with value driven content that pull people towards you. And we've got a subject matter expert who specializes in content marketing here to help. You ready? Let's go.
The Presentation Whisperer. Real world tips, expert insights, and proven strategies to make every presentation unforgettable. Now, here's your host, professional speaker, and best-selling author, Rob Jellis.
Ido Lechner built a content ecosystem and social selling agency from the ground up. Worked with and in some of the coolest places, the VR Lab at NYU, Wix, GSK, Medium, Lincoln Motors, Super Soccer Stars, etc. And speaking of soccer, he's a lifelong soccer player, has coached over 20,000 kids in soccer, which looks almost impossible gauging by his age, but we'll let him tell us from here. You're going to do a better job at this intro than I will. So, Ido, the floor is yours. Tell us about yourself a little bit.
Hey Rob, thanks so much for the intro. I really appreciate it, and also for having me on your show. I'm Ido, and I'm the founder of content marketing and social selling agency Magic Media. I've been in editorial and in content marketing for over a decade, which is matched by my soccer playing journey as well. They've been growing in parallel, and I would say I've embarked on entrepreneurship in the last 3 years or so. So Magic Media is kind of it's past its infancy stage, but it's a toddler now. So it's still growing. We've got a lot of exciting things on the horizon, and that takes us to where we are now, which is content marketing and social selling. So yeah, I'll let you ask the questions.
Sure. And I have to tell you, so everybody knows, uh, Ido found me through his marketing. Uh, did a little marketing for me, and I was just really impressed and sort of learning what he's doing. So he's not just a guest. I got to look under the hood a little bit, and he does some really interesting work. So pleasure to have you. Now, I want to start with not just content, but as you call it, a content ecosystem. What exactly is that, and why should we be thinking along these lines?
Yeah, so great question, Robin. Thanks for asking it. And also thanks for having me on your show. So, content ecosystem, as opposed to a one-off piece of content, is your bird's eye view of all of your different marketing channels and how can they support one another as well. So, as opposed to what I call random acts of marketing, which is essentially one-off pieces of content that might not ladder up to a bigger picture, content ecosystem starts with big picture first and disseminates it across your different channels. And so, how can we have LinkedIn supporting our newsletter, supporting our YouTube, supporting our website, and all of them interplay with one another in an intelligible way? That's a content ecosystem, and it supports brand building much further than just going solo channel or singular pieces of content here and there.
But you know, it's like a catch-22, Edo, and I'll tell you why. Because on the one hand, we've got some people, unfortunately, who just dip their toe in, send one or two things, and write a blog or two. I'm famous for looking at websites where I see the word blog, go in there and see, hasn't written a blog since 2014. Okay, so that's one side of the pie. But the other side of the pie, and this is the ironic one, is the people that do kind of keep digging in and digging in. They're producing content. That's the good news. But their content isn't really being found. And I'm a subject matter expert on parts of that too. So you're talking to somebody who the good news is I don't give up. The bad news is I'm not fighting for people to find it as carefully as I should. What do you say to people like, well, like Rob Jollis?
Yeah, that's another fantastic question. I would say that right off the bat, there needs to be a level of intentionality
Mm.
behind not just the production of the content, but in the findability of it, in the searchability. Now, once upon a time, that looked like, just slapping on a few hashtags onto the post and then the algorithm would do the rest. Nowadays, it doesn't feel like the algorithms are as much of our friends as they used to be. Now, I could go into little hacks and tricks that you can do for the different algorithms, but on the whole, if we're to take a bird's eye view on it, what we want to understand is the incentive of the different algorithms where you're posting, which is that they want to keep you in channel as long as possible, right? So the idea is how can you design your content in a way that doesn't just meet your target audiences and solves their problems, but it also keeps them invested in the channel that they already are in. So that's number one. Now, that, like you said, is a catch-22 because when we're talking about content ecosystems, we want it to ladder up to our own brand. Right? Like we want a LinkedIn post for people to then click into it, go into our website, see what we're about. And the ultimate ambition is for them to become a client or to service them in some way. Now, what people need to understand, and this is where also content ecosystems come in, is that a singular post more often than not, I would even venture to say, and then, I don't want to assign a statistic to it, but more often than not, a singular post won't do the job on its own. And that's because we tend to overvalue the weight that a singular post has in terms of impact. And so really when it comes to content, what we have to be aware of is that content marketing is by and large at first glance, it is brand awareness and visibility before it's any of the other things. And when I say the other things, the missing ingredient there is trust. And so content marketing is great for designing a one-to-many approach where you're kind of casting a wide net and reaching a lot of different people, but it needs to be married with, like I said, a more intentional approach. So that's where social selling comes in. That's where sending people to your content in an intelligent way, linking content together. There's something called link clustering, which I would recommend people look into, which it's essentially creating core themes that your content will sit in buckets. So you have a large problem that your content addresses, and you can break that down into sub pieces that might interest different audience
All right, let,
members.
let me throw out an example. As a sales trainer, let's say that I was just focusing on objection handling. Okay. Are you referring to basically saying, okay, Rob, put up one piece that just deals with clarifying objections, put up another piece that deals with separating misunderstandings from drawbacks, put another piece up that separates closing it off, finishing it off. In other words, chip away at it. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, 100%. That's it. You brought so much clarity to what I'm saying because essentially one piece of content might solve a problem for one type of person and another piece of content might solve a problem for someone else within the same category, but they didn't have that specific problem. So maybe someone is having difficulty with sales objections, but another person is having difficulty kind of reining conversations back in, bringing it back into the point in order to get the sale to begin with. So the pieces of content would differ based on what one person expects to see versus the other based on the issues that they're having, right? And but if you were to design an ecosystem around it, you can address those different issues and send people from one problem to the next in an intelligible way that doesn't just establish your authority, but it also builds trust along the way. So they're not just seeing Rob as the expert anymore, but they're seeing you as an individual who can solve their problems.
Hmm,
So that's one thing, link clustering. Talking about pillars, content
got
pillars.
it.
And so, what are the core problems that your audience has? And can you identify them in a way that is different, that one problem is differentiated from the next, right? So we use the MISI framework, which is mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive, in order to identify, say, 3 to 5 it, topical issues that you want your content to address for your target audience. Now, those different topics, they can manifest across different channels.
I'm going to tell you about 4 minutes ago, Ida said there's a few hacks that may be available. We're going to close this show off with one hack, okay? Just one. That means Ito's show is going to be the most listened to from beginning to end of all the shows that we've got here. So I want people to stick around because we're not going to let them off the hook with that. We're just going to get a hint of one good hack at the end of this. All right, I'm tap dancing for you. Got what you got? You got the point you're going to make? All right, keep going.
More or less. So essentially, you want to think of your content ecosystem across different content pillars. right? So if you're talking about one thing at a time or a singular point, then it's not going to engage your different target audiences. You want to make sure that your focus is attuned to those individual audiences where they might live. So your LinkedIn audience might expect one thing, your newsletter audience might expect another thing, your YouTube audience might expect a third thing, but how can you keep them within that singular content ecosystem? So that's where addressing it through different content pillars is where that comes into handy.
Hmm, okay. Well, that makes sense. You also talk about, and I've heard this said, but I know that you talk about giving before you ask. Okay. Um, specifically, uh, even a single ask, what does that look like in practice? This give before you ask.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. That's a great question. So, in the marketing world, basically what we like to say is give, 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 ask. And the reason we do that is because when you're approaching a stranger, they don't implicitly trust you. They don't know you. So, in order to get to know you first, the best thing that you can do for someone is to give first, to give something that would be of value to them. And the best way to do that is to give something that will ladder up to your offer. So, you want to give them that frame of reference of what it is that you do and what you're about. And so, the lead magnet shouldn't just be something that's random. And did we introduce lead magnets? A lead
No, but
magnet.
we're gonna. That's my. I got a follow up question on lead magnets. So we're about, and let's do that in 10 seconds. And you can correct me, by the way. But we're just talking about when somebody hits that website and sees the immortal, hey, do this, give us your email address, maybe your text, whatever, and I'm going to send you that. That is in a very Rob Jollis crude version of what a lead magnet is, so we can get some
Yeah.
leads and we're giving and asking. But I'll let you fill in the blanks there. But keep going. So we now know what a lead magnet is. Yeah.
Okay. So we want to give, 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 ask. And the reason why we say give three times is because it's a studied, proven ratio in terms of buyer psychology for when someone feels comfortable in order to actually make a purchase with you. So if you've only given once, you've kind of gotten them over that fence a little bit, but
Hmm.
they might still be teetering on, a couple questions like, is this person trustworthy? Are they truly the expert in their space? How can they benefit me truly, right? And so by giving three times, you're establishing that confidence in you, not just as an authority figure, but also as an individual who's capable of actually performing what it is that you're offering. And so the lead magnets ladder up to your ultimate offer in a way that is providing value first so that you can establish that trust. Now, we always say that when it comes to sales, you shouldn't think of a sales call as a given. People won't just get on a call just because you ask them to. And so you have to earn the right to actually get on a call with someone before you can even pitch. And so that's where lead magnets actually come in, is you're earning the right to the conversation by giving value up front.
All right. Let me chase that one down a little bit. So when you say give, give, okay, I'm hearing in my head. Well, now you help me.
Sure.
One version of interpreting what you just said is give and then follow with this email chain of some more information that might provide some clarity as to what we do, or let's make it more for the client. Some more information in an email. It's not a gift anymore, okay? But that would provide value in some way, a tip, a technique, an idea. Will that count, or do we have to actually give them three different objects, books, whatever it is? What constitutes that those gives?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say two things. One is the actual sort of material cost of the gift. Now,
Right.
it doesn't have to be necessarily a dollar value, but it has to be something that seems, at least for the audience, somewhat out of reach. So it has to be something that they would feel that they couldn't accomplish on their own. That is what establishes you as the expert. So that's number one. But that doesn't necessarily tell you, well, what do they find valuable, right? That just tells you that you want to give them something of an impressive weight of value. But what do they actually find valuable? That's theirs to make the determination. So you have to listen to your audience and understand what is it that they are actually interested in that they can't necessarily achieve themselves, but that if you were to give it to them, they would be over the moon. So, for example, with Magic Media, we offer free content calls for people where we take it, we clip the content after the conversation, and we create polished videos out of it for socials. And we give that to people purely as a gift, as a thank you for having a conversation with us. And in return, they get free promotion around their content. They get to establish themselves as an authority figure with their audience. And in exchange, we get a shout out for having done the work for them. But more importantly, we get to continue the conversation with them. Hopefully, they become a client afterwards. Now, the content that we produce for them is something that for them feels somewhat out of reach. They're generally astounded by the polish of the content, and they just never thought to do it themselves, or they didn't know how to approach it. And so, the ability to produce that for them, that's that wow factor that determines a good lead magnet.
Okay, so another question. I'm going to give you my version of this. If you haven't listened to the show much, I always love sitting in the amateur chair, listening to the pros and go, here's an amateur version. Am I close? Okay. But I'm going to let you go first. Give me an example of a couple of high performing lead magnets. Okay. And then I'm going to give you a different mindset on lead magnets in terms of giveaways and tell me if I'm right. But you go first. Give us an example.
Okay, well, so the content cause are is our number one. We get high traction off of that just in terms of yeses. I would say our conversion rate is somewhere around 20 to 30% of every person that we reach out to agrees to get on a call with us, which is insanely high for cold outreach. So
Yeah.
that's another one that's worked very well for us are executive roundtables. So that's where, contrary to say a webinar where it's say 100 people on a call, but they're all tuned in listening to a singular person presenting. In this case, it's a more intimate setting, say 8 decision makers across different companies. And the value that we're offering them is in being a connector. We're introducing them to people in their space where they can do competitive benchmarking with. They can talk to them about specific topics like, hey, I'm having an issue with, you know, um, say, delegating decision making across my organization. How do you approach that in your company? And then those 8 decision makers, they're getting together, they're discussing a certain topic that we set out in ahead of time. But the value there isn't necessarily in the creation of anything. It's in connecting people. And so to back to your
It's
question earlier
interesting. Yeah.
back to your question earlier about like what constitutes a lead magnet and how do you know if it's valuable enough? Again, it really just comes down to what would that person find valuable and what feels unattainable for them.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, an executive roundtable is a great example of that because you're able to get people in front of others that they deem of their caliber, and it's far more interactive than say a webinar because they're able to engage with one another.
Right. By the way, mind blown on this side because I thought you were going in a completely different direction. So I'm really glad. That's why I love having these conversations because professional speakers like me, we're fairly myopic. We see the website, we see the giveaway, we create the giveaway, we put it on our website. What's next? Okay. So, particularly when you're dealing with most people who are authors, guess what we're giving away? An ebook of some sort. So, we're kind of stuck in that one place. And yet, to your point, and I would say, unfortunately, only once, the problem with being an unconscious competent, in other words, doing it right, not knowing you're doing it right, is you don't repeat it because you don't know you're doing it right. But I had a client about a year ago who I was really trying to land. I never knew this was called a lead magnet. But here I am in my office and they said we still got to hire some people. It's been difficult. And I went, well, how about the next interview that you have with a new candidate? Bring me in on Zoom. I mean, what is this costing me, Ito? Nothing. Bring
Right.
me in on Zoom and
Right.
I'll be there and I'll ask a couple questions and I'll just give you some feedback. They were blown away by this. What did that cost? Nothing, but it allowed me to create trust with the client. I just never knew that was a lead magnet. And so I never repeated it again. I fell into it accidentally. So, A, thank you for clarifying that. B, Give us real fast that website because I know people are going to be hanging around to the end, but what's the website? What's your website real fast?
magicmedia.io.
Perfect. Okay.
And
Yep. Go
just
ahead.
real quick, the .io actually spurs another thought, which is arguably one of the best lead magnets that you can give is a free trial. So the ability to actually get into the weeds of what it is that you're offering, get down and dirty with it, use the tool yourself, use the service yourself, see how it works. And you see this a lot in, for instance, SaaS businesses, right? They might give you, especially like in the AI boom now, there's a lot of AI tools where they offer you either like 3 free generations or a specific amount of credits, and then if you choose to upgrade it after the fact, then you could buy either more credits or you have unlimited number of runs that you can use with the AI. But the idea is, can we give people a sampler first? And that builds that trust in the tool and the service in order to ladder up to purchase.
Yeah. Chop AI, if you've ever heard of them, is a classic example and that's how I became a client.
Yeah,
Credits, tried it, purchased it. Now I have lots of credits. Okay.
that's right.
So, but to your point, that's how they got me because I needed to see it once or twice with live fire with real shows I was doing. So that's how they got a year subscription out of me. All right, real fast. Remember I told you I was going to swap in. I had no idea you were going to do a 180 on me and completely redefine lead magnets. But I'll tell you where I was going, and I think you'll get some value out of this. You may or may not know that I moonlight for about 15 years now as a live auctioneer for charities.
Oh,
And
wow.
they're constantly coming to me for what should we give away? What should we give away? A lot of times before I get there, it looks like a garage sale. Okay. They're just going into people's garages. Well, I can get that anywhere. I can get that anywhere. I remember one time, and my motto and mantra has always been give them something they can't normally get on their own. Give them
Yeah.
something they can't go to the bookstore and buy. Okay. So, and we got to get creative, but I will tell you, just as a point of fact, one of the greatest auction items I ever gave away was we found somebody that knew somebody who knew somebody, got tickets to the Academy Awards. We bundled that up with two airline tickets. Marriott threw in 2 nights. We spent 40, 50, $60 on a limo. Okay. Maybe a little more than that, $100 on a limo, whatever it was. Sold it for $35,000. Okay. Because you can't get that on eBay. Okay. And so that always sort of changed my version of what I'm going to give away is something unique. And so I'm always encouraging people, maybe it's the chapter you didn't put in your book, maybe just something that feels special to the client. Your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
No, I love that. I think that what you said about it feeling like something that they couldn't get on their own, that sense of exclusivity, that definitely raises the value of the lead magnet. It needs to be something that they would hire you for down the road. So that's how you can think of lead magnets. It needs
Yeah.
to ladder to the bigger picture. We're not the same way that with content, we're not just producing one-off content. With lead magnets, it's not a one-off interaction. It needs to buy that or earn that ability to then have that further conversation. If it's not earning you that ability to earn to have a dialogue, then it's not doing its job.
Outstanding. And for people that are listening right now, someone's just starting out, what's the simplest first lead magnet they might be able to jump into? We're talking about some pretty advanced stuff around here. Although I will tell you, just the conversation Ito and I are having right now, you'd be surprised how, as I said, how simple it is to get in there and just virtually help a client out with A, B, or C and let them get to kick the tires a little bit. But what would be a simple lead magnet for somebody who's just listening, going, I'm going to give this a try?
I would say that you want to reverse engineer your services. So look at what you offer, and then what is something that you can produce at scale within it that still feels difficult for the client to attain on their own or the prospect to attain on their own. So is there something within your service offering that you can kind of piecemeal or break off from the service and then offer a sampler of that? So for instance, that's where our content calls come in. We offer content marketing across all of the different channels, right? But we offer a free video call as a lead magnet that leads up to those services. So we want to showcase our ability to create polished video clips. We want to showcase our ability to ask interesting questions that spur meaningful dialogue and bring out the best of people in those videos. And so those are abilities or capabilities that we're able to showcase through the lead magnet. And so you want to showcase your abilities through the lead magnet, which is why I'm recommending piecemealing something from your service. And
Right.
that showcases your aptitude for the rest of the things as well.
Yeah, it's really smart. So you're getting the best of both worlds. You're not just giving a piece of pie, you're giving them a little taste of your pie. So
Yeah,
so they
exactly.
yeah, so they don't just learn, but they're learning about the way you structure or build that pie. I love that. All right, we're coming down the home stretch. Let's see. How about I'll finish off with this question. And again, selfishly, because I like to think that I intentionally do things wrong so that the audience can learn from Rob's mistakes. But one of the things that I tend to do is I'll put a lot of effort into a lead magnet of sorts. And then, and it's almost as if I get tired. I'm exhausted already. And now the lead magnet's out there sort of doing its thing, and I tend to go to sleep a little bit. Uh, what can you say, but other than stop that, Rob, and others? What can you say? Is there a mechanism? Is there something that can keep us on target so we don't just build a beautiful lead magnet or come up with a creative idea to support a client, but continue intelligently advancing that relationship? Any thoughts or advice from your end?
I would say build out or design what every touch point or what every interaction with you looks like from the get-go so that you know what you're going to offer or what the conversation would look like post lead magnet. So
Mhm.
after you offer the lead magnet, assuming they're wowed by it, you should know what are your next steps. So maybe that looks like getting on another call with them, offering them a second lead magnet. So that's the second give in the give ask, stringing those together. So actually knowing what that second lead magnet will be and that third lead magnet will be. Um, or if they're ready already, like if they're showing interest to then move into purchasing and you're ready to have those conversations. So knowing what kind of objections they might have on the top, off the top of their heads, knowing how essentially how you want to steer them along that purchasing path. And so that's what I recommend is really being intentional, scripting out all of the different scenarios. And, if someone says this objection, or if someone's asking you, what's the catch? Which is something we get a lot when we're offering lead magnets. You should already know what you're going to say before you say it. So that's very helpful because then it systematizes the process of offering lead magnet, getting on a call, second lead magnet, third lead magnet, close client. And that's what you want. You want to have a system that you can fall back on in order to attain new clients, engage prospects early. That's the idea, is systematizing your business, and that's how lead magnets can help.
Perfect. And I'll be your poster child of a guy that did not do that. And will tomorrow. I mean, that wasn't in the instruction manual. What was in my instruction manual was we're going to build it, we're going to put it on your website, and you're going to be happy with it. Well, they did, and they did, and I did, and I'm happy. But I never knew that there was a system to sort of now what. And as a sales trainer, um, that doesn't feel very good because I got the attention of my client. I didn't follow up with my client.
Right.
But I don't have a system, and I like the fact that you're kind of process driven on this. All right, I promised everybody, and I think we already got a few, but let's formalize it. I promised them one hacker trick, okay, at the end, just one. Give me something that just a little trick of the trade, okay?
So one trick of the trade is spend an inordinate amount of time on your hooks and on the visual language of your content. So you want to have a very appealing intro that either is either divisive in a sense, like it gets people on one camp or the other camp, or it just commands attention because that's the job of the hook. The job of the hook is not to tell people all of what you're about to say in the jump. It's actually just to command attention. Because when we're scrolling through our feeds, right? You have to think about the buyer's intent or the intent of the audience. They might not be in buying mode. They might not, they might be in escape mode, and they're just trying to kind of forget about the rest of the things in their life right now and just go through the feed. And so before you do anything else, you want to command attention. And I think that's something that a lot of people miss when it comes to content marketing, is that we're in an attention economy. And we need to command attention before we can actually move on to the point of the content from the beginning. And so the best pieces of content are not just the ones that have that are backed by a strong insight per se, or that can educate the audience. First and foremost, they just command attention. And so you want to spend a lot of time on your thumbnails, on your hooks, things that draw people in. I think I heard a statistic somewhere that Mr. Beast on YouTube spends about $1,000 on each YouTube thumbnail,
Wow.
which sounds absurd. But then when you look at the money that he generates as a result, it's all attributed to the fact that people are clicking in to begin with. Well, what incentivized the click? It wasn't actually necessarily it is the insights that's packed into the content, but first and foremost, it's what attracted them, which is the thumbnail and the hook. And so think about all of your content and how you can reframe it with, say, 4 or 5 different hooks. And this is a practice that I actually recommend to people, is once you have a piece of content ready, think about another framing for that same piece of content. Can you frame it in 4 different ways? Which is the winning framework? And when you think about it that way, you start to see different opportunities, different paths that you can create content with that wasn't at face value the one that you thought would be the winning creative. And you can put that to the test too, to see what actually commands the most attention. If you're to A/B test your hooks, right? Which one actually sucks people in the most? And that's how you know you have a winning hook. Now, that's one hack I would recommend. Another
No,
just
no, 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 no. I
one.
like one hack. I like one hack because I'm going to have you give us your website again. If you want a second hack, I want you to go find my guy here.
I
Okay.
love it.
You're too generous. See,
Hey,
remember, it's a magnet. We're not fixing the business. We're attracting the business.
I
So
love
how
it.
do people get a hold of you again?
Get on magicmedia.io.
Yeah. Sorry, folks. You're going to have to get on magicmedia.io to get the next hack, but he's generous. Just go to him. Go to him directly. He'll be generous. I promise. I know this firsthand. Pleasure having you on the show. Uh, Knocked it out of the park, and I'm grateful not just for the information you shared, but for the help you provided me. So I just want to say thank you, and thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate it.
You bet. Well, we'll do it again as well as we can next time, everybody. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please follow, rate, and review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. For more resources and to connect with Rob, visit thepresentationwhisperer.com.